Hey, Auntie.
Hello, good people. How are you? We are your favorite aunties, and we are back. We have a very special guest for you tonight. I know I always say that, but this one, man, this one you guys are really going to enjoy. We're so excited to see you all. We missed you all week long, and we're just happy to be here to give you a great show tonight. I am Paige Means Hopper. I am the author of Healing the Wounds of American Slavery and the movement of the same name, Healing the Wounds of American Slavery. I got two beautiful ladies with me tonight, and I would love for them to go ahead and introduce themselves to you.
Hi there, I'm here. I'm here to just enjoy and soak up and help with the knowledge. My saying is, your experience is not necessarily the best teacher. Someone else's is, if you'll listen.
Very nice.
Awesome. I am just excited. I'm always excited, but I am Auntie Rosemarie, and you know what? You guys better go for this ride because you're gonna get it. You're gonna get it. Come on, let's do this. I'm ready. I'm excited.
Let's do it. Hello, Facebook users. Hello, YouTube users. We're so excited for you guys tonight because you are about to have the experience of your lifetime. I want to introduce to you our special guest tonight. His name is Mr. Richard Jones, and he is a realtor extraordinaire. Trust me, he is. When he starts talking, you'll understand what I'm saying. And I'm going to allow him to tell you exactly who he is and what he does. Go right ahead and take it away.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you for having me today. So my name is Richard Jones. I am a realtor. I cover the areas of Orange County, Long Beach, Los Angeles County, pretty much all of Los Angeles County, and I'm so excited to be here and share as much possible to add value to your life and answer the questions that you have. And I look forward to just being part of this session. So thank you for having me.
Yay! Thank you for coming. Oh, it's my husband. Hi, babe. There is Michael Hopper. Good evening to you also. So, as usual, what we're going to do is we're going to start by reading a little from Healing the Wounds of American Slavery. And that portion of the book that I read will pertain to tonight's discussion. When I'm finished reading, I'm going to throw it over to the aunties and to Mr. Richard Jones, and we're going to have an incredible discussion tonight. We also want to really invite you Facebook viewers and you YouTube viewers to jump right in, ask your questions, the hard ones, give him some hard ones. He's really good. So ask your questions, make your comments, and join and participate. That makes it so much more fun and so much more informative for everyone because everyone has a great question. There are no stupid questions, okay? So here we go. I'm going to be reading tonight from a section in the book called Being Property. Being Property. And in the book, it's on page 195. Again, the name of the book is Healing the Wounds of American Slavery, and it can be found on Amazon, and it's also on Audible. I can read it to you. So here we go. Being property. Property is something owned or possessed. It gives the owner the exclusive right to possess, enjoy, and dispose of a thing, something to which a person or business has a legal title, an article or an object. And it can also refer to someone who is under contract based on work that is especially valuable. Let's break this down. According to American law, our ancestors were under contract because their work was essentially foundational to building America's economy. At the same time, our ancestors were possessions, objects to be owned, comparable to workhorses. Their owners, by their own laws, had exclusive rights to do with their property as they pleased, even to the point of murder.
Mm.
They had no worries because, like livestock, the enslaved were covered by property insurance.
Mm.
We know this because they were actually listed as livestock in these insurance policies. What is it like to be considered livestock? To be thought of as no more valuable than a cow, a pig, a chicken? To be someone else's object or thing? To be owned? Forced to do another's bidding, do whatever they say, go wherever they say go, wake when they say wake, sleep when they say sleep, think what they tell you to think, breed on demand with whomever they tell you to breed with. What is it like to be programmed to believe your only value is that which you add to another's prosperity?
Mm.
What are you? You are property. Your every day, every minute, every thought is filled with someone else's thoughts, needs, and desires. Every inch of your life is regulated as if by a dictatorial parent with impossibly unreasonable expectations. What was it like to stand on an auction block, to be ripped away from your family and sold to a stranger? A thinking, feeling, reasoning, intelligent human being would have been irreparably devastated. To be in this situation was to be trapped, caged on a plantation like an animal for the rest of your life. And if you were born into it, you would know no other way of being except to be another's property. You were born, raised, and would live out your life as property. When I asked myself, who is being property today? And who are today's owners of human property? The answer was immediate. And that's all I'll read tonight. So we're talking about being property. And the dots that I hope we can connect tonight are the dots between being property and owning our own property, coming out of the mindset of needing to be somewhere where someone has total control over your life or even in your mind. Having it in your mind, a mindset of being property. In the book, I do explain several places where I see we're still being very much so property, being tied to a certain mindset in terms of our ability to move beyond certain parameters and ways of being in relationship to being property, which I believe was transferred through our DNA, through our ancestors. So tonight we have a very special guest with us, Richard Jones. He is incredible at the art because that's what I'm learning that this is. I'm beginning to learn and determine that the real estate business is very much so an art from every perspective. And so I'm going to give the mic over to the ladies and to Mr. Richard Jones, and definitely want to again invite our audience to participate in this discussion by just typing into the chat your questions, your comments, and your feedback into this discussion. So take it away, anyone who feels that they're ready to. What did you get out of what was just read, and how do you connect the dots?
You know what? It's almost as if it was hard to breathe. Now, I've read that, but to hear it, and because I'm visual, to hear it, to see it, to soak it in, it just took my breath away, and not in a good way. And it reminded me of years ago when I was looking for a job, and I went to the unemployment office and nobody was there. And you know, it's a good thing to go to the unemployment office and no one is there. So I went up to the lady and I said, "Excuse me," and she said, "You need to sit down and take a number." And when you read that, it brought me back to that when she told me to sit down and take a number. I was the only one there, and she made me sit till I heard the clock tick. I felt helpless. As you were reading, it brought me back to that uncomfortable, very bad way that she treated me. And then after an hour, she said one. And that's how I felt. I couldn't breathe. And to be in a place, and when you said our ancestors, they had no choice. They had to deal with being on that auction block, helpless, nothing. They had to go along with whatever the system put them through. And it's devastating. It's devastating.
Yes, it is. It is. Michael and I just came back from a vacation. Actually, it wasn't a vacation. We went to a convention at the beginning of the month in Florida, and we had a friend kind of drive us through and take us on a tour down by the water's edge, the Atlantic. And we passed by a place where there was an auction block. And I felt that same way. And immediately I thought, I thought about the idea of property and how, our ancestors were property. They were being sold and traded as property on those auction blocks. And now that we are where we are in our current construct, we have the right to own property. And yet we are only 0.4% property owners in America right now. So take it away. Anyone else?
Yeah.
I had I'm sorry. It was so funny. This has got to be a cultural thing, because the unemployment office is actually the employment office for most Black people. Even when I was growing up, called the unemployment office, because you went there to get a job, and you usually left there without one. So,
Unemployed.
I don't know. It's just, when I think about being able to own a person to work for you and build your wealth while you just kind of sat back and chilled, and didn't have to do nothing with it, but kind of orchestrate over here and over there. And even right now, in our post-racial society, there's a lot of disparity, and there's stuff that's being said that make it seem like we should be able to just jump up and do certain things. But the way it's just, the economics in this country is set up, we can do it, but we can't do it.
Interesting.
There are unseen hands still orchestrating, and so you have the illusion, but it's not the reality.
Very good. The illusion. I like it. Mr. Jones, what say you?
It's a lot to take in. I mean, what you read is extremely powerful. And I was taking notes. I was taking a few notes based on what you stated and what others have stated. And I'm not sure if this is the best question for the forum, but one of the questions that came to my mind is, what is ownership and why does it matter?
I love it. Perfect.
It's really important to that is like the first question that comes to my mind is why do people, beyond the ownership of people, why is real estate such a powerful tool for today and yesterday, and looks like it's going to be also tomorrow?
Okay.
And you did mention something really important. You mentioned the statistics. The statistic you mentioned was 44%, correct?
Yes.
And an interesting fact is that 44% is on the incline of ownership amongst African Americans in the United States of America. It was a lot less than that in the previous years. Now, it was also mentioned, one of the interesting facts was, the access to information. There's tons of information out there on ownership and the benefits, and there's tons of programs that supports the minority becoming a homeowner. Oftentimes, let's just say the person to become a homeowner. Oftentimes, the information doesn't really trickle down to most of most of the communities that oftentimes, and there's tons of studies out there done by Redfin, Zillow, realtors, you name it, that the information all the time doesn't trickle down to the level for the people who need it. And it's so unfortunate. It's so unfortunate. I don't want to take up the stage, so I am going to reel back a little bit to take questions, because I tend to lead with an engaging sort of format. So if I throw questions at you all, don't just know that it's just questions to carry the conversation. More than likely, I have another question behind that question.
And we're willing to go with however you would like to handle the conversation, because this is the front porch. And so you're up here with your aunties, and we can just talk about whatever it is that you want and however you feel. Now, I wanted to clear up a statistic. Although we do own 44% of real estate, but that's only a 0.4% increase within the last 10 years.
Yes.
And so we really want to address that tonight. And we're flipping ownership on its head is what we're doing. So essentially, we're going from being owned to now becoming owners. And so what we would love for you to do tonight is talk about how we can establish ourselves more as owners, particularly as it pertains to land, property, homes, commercial real estate, because those are important entities and important assets. And so, if you could tell us, for example, like you said, there's a lot of information out there. So where should someone who is a first-time home owner or commercial property owner, where do they start?
Well, I would say the first step would be what you mentioned earlier. It's having the mindset. You mentioned that earlier. It was really important. I love that statement, having the mindset. Oftentimes we have to see ourselves as owners. So many people see themselves as renters or lifelong renters versus owners. But having the thought of ownership, because ownership is more than just ownership. It's so much attached to ownership. Legacy. First thing that comes to my mind, legacy. Being able to pass down something you've purchased that continues to grow equity. And for those who doesn't know what equity means, I'll give you a brief description. Equity is you purchased it for $400,000, for example, and today it's worth $800,000.
Okay.
Why is that important? That's important because in reality, and let me back up when I say $400,000 in our current market.
Yes.
In the last 8 years, or even 10 years, let's go 10 years. In the last 10 years, most people have seen their net worth just by owning real estate almost double. They purchased it for they purchased it for it's worth 8, and in some cases, based on the zip code, it's worth 1 point something.
So when you say our market, you're talking about California's, and particularly Southern California, yes or no?
All of California.
All of California. Okay.
If you go up to the top, it's insane. It's insane.
It is.
When you get closer to the top of North Cal, it's insane. It's pricing people out because you have the Google, you have the Microsoft, you have people with salaries at $400,000 easily.
Right. So you're talking about the San Francisco Bay Area. Yeah.
A whole nother another area. The next benefit is leverage, being able to access that equity. So it's not only about legacy, but it's also about leverage, being able to access that equity. And I'm going to use the simple fact: if you purchased it for 4, it's worth, and I'm going to use simple terms here. If you purchase it for 4, it's worth 8. You have access to $400,000 in equity. And I'm being very loose with this because there are some guidelines, lending guidelines, which you're going to get maybe 75% of it, but I'm not going to be that specific because that's not this forum. But I want to keep it simple terms for people to digest the information.
Gotcha.
So when you have access to leverage equity, you could take that extra $400,000 and purchase another property, or purchase commercial property, or purchase additional rental properties, which only inflates your wealth. So that's another benefit. Stability and control. That's another benefit of ownership. Knowing that you don't have someone telling you, 1, you're going to have a rental increase, or 2, you have to move.
Yes.
Stability and control. How much peace of mind does it feel to know every month your monthly payment never changes?
Wow.
I know people who have purchased and they've been paying $1,200 for 10 years. And I know people have been renting, and that $1,200 is now $2,800.
Mm.
and they have nothing to show for it.
Nothing.
And it's extremely unfortunate. But that's our society that we live in. And then I'm going to phase it down a little bit more, is that the additional benefit is that we're all aging one way or another.
Yes.
If you're in your 40s, no, if you're in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever you are in life, we're all aging. And at some point in time, more than likely, you're going to have to reach a place of retirement.
Yes.
And it is the best nest egg that you could have. I have not seen a 401k grow. I haven't seen a 401k millionaire yet, but I've seen tons of real estate millionaires.
Because the property or the real estate grows exponentially. Oh. And one of the things that I'm hearing you say that is so powerful is that it gives peace of mind. It gives control. That is one of the things that ownership brings about, that, you know, our ancestors didn't have any control, but we do. And so this is one of the ways and one of the entities where we can gain more control. You talked about stability. You talked about legacy and growing equity, leveraging that equity. And you also talked about one of the things that's like a hot topic, a hot button right now, is wealth. And so when we talk about what wealth really is, it is the ability to be able to pass down, you know, something that you've developed, grown in such a way that it has even more value to the next generation and continues to gain value.
Exactly. I love it. I love it. Exactly. And those is, and I'm on the top of the iceberg, because it's not only is real estate the number one wealth builder in America, but it's also a tax shelter. So when people aren't purchasing real estate like Rolexes or cars, they're purchasing it for another benefit. It's a tax shelter. When you own real estate, you get, and it's based on how you own real estate. So if you own it as an individual versus as you own it as an investment, two different tax benefits. You always hear, and I don't know if you've heard this, but most people have heard, rich people don't pay taxes. Rich people don't pay taxes. Lower income people pay the highest taxes. I mean, lower income people are paying, let me back up. Lower income individuals without real estate are paying the highest taxes.
Isn't that interesting?
On real estate, you're writing, as an individual primary residence owner, like you live in your home, you're writing off interest, you're writing off really just pretty much interest. But let's flip it on the other side. Let's say you turn that property into a rental. You just take you leave that property, you use your equity, you buy another property, you move into that property, and then you rent that property out. And now it gets exciting. Now it gets exciting because you could easily take when it talks about tax benefits, you can write off the repairs for the property. You could do a full renovation and write it all off as a tax deduction. And that is exciting. What they're not teaching us in our school system.
Right.
And me personally, I'll be honest, I have rental properties. And the only reason why I have rental properties and I leverage equity is because I can do a complete home improvement on that property, still collect rents, and pay less in taxes for the simple fact of ownership. And this is what extremely wealth-minded individuals are doing every day.
Got it. And you are a wealth-minded individual. And I want to bring up a point, and I definitely want the ladies to jump in here, but I wanted to bring up a point that I know about you personally that I think really pertains to this conversation. And we're talking about legacy. And you just mentioned that, you know, these are things that we don't learn in school. And so if we're not learning it in school, then where else do we learn it except those in our village, in our circle, our inner circle, our parents, our aunts, our uncles, our cousins. And if they don't know or they don't teach it, then it doesn't get taught. You are teaching your daughter.
Yes, I am.
About that.
I mean, it's a requirement in my household.
It's exciting.
Information when I was young, and I'm fortunate that I picked it up later. And when I say I'm fortunate that I picked it up later, it's very hard to find people who can mentor you in wealth building.
Mhm.
And I always tell people, just like you're doing on this platform,
Mhm.
you're sharing your book, you're sharing your story.
Mhm.
And I always tell people, if you can't find a direct mentor, find a book and let that book mentor you.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
one of the, and then you mentioned my daughter, one of the things that we practice in our household is not only a growth mindset but a financial mindset. And I have my daughter read, well, let's say read, or well, she's still like slightly young, so I have her understand different excerpts of different books that I've read that changed my life. Like,
Interesting.
for example, Rich Dad Poor Dad,
Yeah.
a very strong book for, and I know Auntie Paige mentioned that book to me a few times.
Yeah, we have a whole collection of Robert Kiyosaki here.
Yes, yes, and those who haven't read that book, that is definitely one of the books that you should definitely pick up. But pick up this one first. This is the one we're doing. Go buy Auntie
Buy
Paige.
them both. You can afford them both.
Yeah, it's true. And but yes, I am teaching my daughter, and one of the requirements in our household is also, and not only buy real estate. I'm gonna take it a step further, and maybe I don't want to say this out loud, but it's also a requirement that she gets a real estate license.
Yes.
So it's not just enough to understand real estate, but to understand real estate to the level that you could purchase it and sell it. That's just another level. Me and my wife, we've already said every child in our house, when they turn 18, they have to get their real estate license.
I love it.
And I hate to say this, and I'm going to say, I feel like real estate is like the best kept secret in the.
Talk about it. We need to expose the secret. That's why you're here.
I'm going to put it out there. It is literally
there.
the best kept secret. So I'm going to say why it's the best kept secret is because I have seen people step into real estate and their whole entire life change.
Yes.
And I say that because there's so much value in it. Because one of my millionaire mentors, he said, we don't get paid for time, we get paid for value.
Yeah.
Just like a surgeon makes more than a general doctor. It's because there's a high level of value. And in real estate, a lot of people don't know real estate. So a person who's selling real estate on the lending side, or they're selling it as a direct salesperson, they can easily, and I'm putting it out there, they could easily on one transaction. And I don't know, before I even say the number, what do you believe the average one transaction in real estate makes? Not even
the average transaction.
What's the average transaction? What would you say?
Okay, and you're talking about from the seller's perspective.
Yeah. So if you're an agent representing a buyer or a seller, what would you say the average agent is making?
Oh, the agent, not the seller.
Agent.
The agent.
What would you say he's making?
Well, I don't know a lot about it yet. I'm still studying and getting into the game. But what I know is that, there are points and there are percentages and there are all of these facets of or I should say streams of income that an agent can make just on one transaction, right? Just so I would say the average in California, because you just said that, I believe you said that the average property in California, and I have to guess that you're talking about a multi or a single family dwelling, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, then we're talking about 400,000, 500,000 is the average.
Yeah, we'll say
I think they would make about $40,000 to $50,000.
Okay, I wish it was that nice, but yeah.
You had a question or you had a guess?
No.
I had a guess.
She has a guess too. Let's hear your guess.
Okay, I was thinking along the lines between 10 and 25,000 per transaction.
That's a broad range. So, but yeah, it's no.
That's
So
a very broad range.
that's but we're still within range. So this is why like when we mentioned it's just not only being a consumer of real estate,
Yes.
but also putting see yourself as also a provider of real estate.
In position to play the
Because
game.
real estate plays two parts. It's a business side, and then there's a consumer side. And I know I'm supposed to only talk about the consumer side, but
you're supposed to talk about whatever's on your mind.
Because it's really important. Because I before I became a realtor, I was only on the consumer side in a sense that I purchased one rental, purchased another rental, and then I have to share this part, then I'll answer the question.
Okay.
I met a guy. I met a guy who I would see midday. No matter what time of the day, I'll be out for work. I'll see this guy. He drove a $150,000 car, but he always looked happy. And I stopped him because I never hesitate to ask somebody, "What do you do? How do you do it? How are you just look? Yeah, you're always happy." Because I'm always loving to pick brains and always looking for another mentor, someone's already there. He said that I sell real estate. And he told me it's good to purchase it, but it's sometimes, if you have the skill, because it's not for everyone, if you have the skill, it's always not only to be a consumer, but also be a provider of it, because it's such a high value skill to have. So to go back to the question I asked earlier with the responses, which I asked the gentleman, I said, well, what are you doing in real estate? What are you making on average? Because I mean, I have a strong background and I have 2 master's degrees. I got one from Northridge and I got another from USC. I've been a professor here. I've been a professor there. I've worked at this hospital. I've done everything. But I've done everything that led me to this thing. And I feel like this is where I feel like this is the true value and this is the true stage. So it's still, someone said, between 3 and 6%. So if you ever become an agent, and someone wrote 3 to 6%, the average agent could easily make about 3%. The average home price in California is about $800K. So we say $800,000 times a 3% commission, you're looking at a $24,000 payday that you're going to get in roughly about 26 days.
After the sale, after the close.
After the completion of sale.
Got it.
I was like, wait a minute. When I heard that number, I was like, wait a minute. I work hard. I get a client. You know how long it would take the average person to save up $24,000, and these people are doing it in a matter of 15 to 20 days?
Got it.
So I already knew where I belonged.
Okay.
And I'm fortunate enough to, and then like I said, not everybody is designed to sell
to
real
do
estate.
this work. Can you bring up that question again, DY? There was a question earlier, or a comment. I don't know what that was. Can you bring that back up? The importance of real estate goes way beyond the square footage you own. Your property taxes directly fund and affect the quality of education in the owner's area. That's true. The lack of ownership mutes our voices. Very, very powerful statement. What do you say about that, Richard?
It's 100%. It's 100% true. So I'm gonna reel back to that question. So property tax. I mean, it's property tax goes there. It funds. I mean, voices, yes, and also your property tax takes care of your sewer, takes care of your streets. It takes care of the schooling system, the books your kids may go to, and then the better the school, the better kept community, the better the better the home values are. And oftentimes you get greater property tax, and that means there's more money in the city. That's why Orange County looks a lot different than LA County. It's because the property values in LA are so low because the way their system is set up compared to Orange County, property values are a little bit much higher. So they're better funded. So when you live in better funded communities, you get better funded schools. And when you get better funded schools, you get better education. When you get better education, you make better decisions. And oftentimes, better communities come with higher educated people with higher incomes. Not all the time, but oftentimes comes.
We see it.
Yeah, you see it. So you're around people who are doing extremely well, and they're making very positive decisions. And I always go back to, and it's a running joke that we have in our household, is that I would have became a doctor or a surgeon if I was around doctors and surgeons, but I didn't know any doctors or surgeons. So when my professional, before I became a realtor, I was a social worker. Mm-hmm. So I became a social worker. My wife became a social worker. And until we worked around doctors, and then we're like, wait a minute, I could have became a doctor. I never thought about
it. But what's powerful about, in my opinion, what's powerful about your social worker background is that all of those skills come into play when you're making deals both on the buyer and the seller end of this. And since we're back on the consumer side of things, with a question that came up originally was, what is the first thing that someone should do if they're a first-time home, or if they're first-time home buyer or commercial real estate buyer? And so let's come back to the consumer side a little bit and give people a little bit more information about how they can get started in buying and selling. And unless, Rosemary, did you have a question or comment, or Genoa?
No, I'm glad you brought that up.
I'm soaking it up.
and I'm
if you represent the client and they sell and buy, then it's double. Hi, Shonda. And she has some good questions and comments here. And sometimes, if fully disclosed, you can represent the seller and the buyer. Used to be possible 20 years ago in Texas anyway. Is it possible here in California now? Represent both. That seems like a conflict of interest, though. I don't know.
You can represent both in California.
Okay.
In California. And that's just, and so that's from the business side. So it's really important to, and the reason why we all have to start somewhere. So yes, you can represent both as an agent. And like I mentioned earlier, being an agent is extremely consuming. It's a lot of work, and it's not for everybody. But that is just a nutshell or a seed that I'm just planting in someone's head who may be listening and never seen themselves.
I think it might be growing here.
I think it. I mean, it's you know, I think that we should all have multiple skills. So we never have to go to an unemployment building, because we always have to.
In your opinion, what percentage of our income should go to housing costs monthly?
That's a loaded question. Based on your financial situation and your goals. I have mine set up. I'll give an example. So let's say $100, for example. I believe in setting 25%. I believe in setting 25% for a savings, emergency fund, we'll call it. I believe in putting another 25% in investing. And then I believe in putting 50% in the business.
Okay. Because
that's the way I have it structured. Or it could be 50% because you all have a business. So that's why I'm
right.
But we can break it down in simple terms. 25, you should always obligate some of your money towards investments like the S&P 500, and then another 25% to live off of, and then another 25% for your business, and another 25% for your goals. But I always believe you should always have 4 pillars. So you should always have 4 pillars. And I know that the questions keep popping up, so I'm going to jump.
They do, and that's just what it is on the porch. So it's okay. It's not linear. It's not a linear conversation. It's just, wherever.
And I know I have so much time. I only have so much time with you, and I want to plant as many seeds. I want to get all this out of my head and get it in each person's head, because sometimes you don't know what's possible. You never think about it until someone say it, and you're like, whoa, the light bulb goes off.
Beautiful. And we'll bring you back for a part 2, by the way.
Oh, okay. Love it. I want to say love it. And I want to say one of them, and going back towards ownership.
The consumer end, yes.
The most important asset you can have is real estate, like we mentioned, and the number one wealth builder. One of the things I want to say is really, well, the first step is pretty much preparing. It's a marathon. Purchasing a property is a marathon. You want to look at purchasing a property as a marathon. You want to look at it as, you want to make sure you get your credit in place. Pay down your debts.
Okay.
Because the more debts you have, it's a red flag to the lender, and they're going to more than likely give you a lower approval. because it's really based on your ability to pay. I know oftentimes people are like, oh, I got to have an 800 credit score. In actuality, credit score does matter, but it's not the only determining factor. Credit worthiness is one of them. The second one is your ability to afford to pay for a home. So let's go back to the first one. Really start looking at your finances, paying off your debt. That's one of the most major things you could do. 2, educate yourself on real estate. Educate yourself on real estate. What is the market looking like? Is it a hot market? Is it a cool market? Is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? And the difference is based on inventory. Give me 1 second. One second.
Sure.
I'm gonna plug up my computer. I'm getting up.
Okay, absolutely. So the first point that he made was to pay down your credit and establish yourself as a credible buyer. And he's saying that you don't necessarily have to have a very, very high credit score, like 800 or plus, but just, make sure that you're credible. And then the ability to afford to pay. Like, do you have a job? Do you have a business? Do you have a steady income of flow of income where you will be able to afford to pay your mortgage? I mean, because they will be looking at that. And then one of the most important things that I think Richard said is to educate yourself on real estate, which is what I'm doing now. I mean, I'm having so much fun. It's such a fascinating business. And, the reward then at the end of the day will be a piece of property that I can do whatever I want with. I could live in it. I could rent it. I could put an ADU in my backyard and have someone else live there and rent that out. I could get, a studio or a theater or, and rent that or use it for my own business and producing content and films and theater. I can do whatever I want with it. But the main point is this shifting of the mindset from being property, right, to owning property and the freedom that it gives you, the peace of mind that it gives you. And most of all, what I love that he's talking about is the legacy, right? Is being able to pass something down to the next generation, because there are too many of us who, we have grandparents, aunts, uncles who own property, but then when they pass away, nobody in the family can afford to take over the property. And so then it's sold away. And so what kind of legacy is that? When they worked their, what's off to establish themselves as property owners for us. You know what I mean? So we kept the conversation while you were gone.
No,
what you're saying,
the entire time.
To Rose, just for a moment, she had a question, I think, or comment.
No, I was just piggybacking on what you were saying, Paige, about when we get the property, then we kind of lose it to the property tax. And I think that's a part of just lack of information for somebody that inherits a home instead of out buying it, because we don't know a lot. That's why I'm really excited about this topic, because we don't know a lot about how to keep the property and everything that we need to go through it. Like, for instance, I did have a question that was like building up, like actually two, the lending side of it. And then also, do you have trouble when someone comes and they want to buy the house, but then they don't want to buy it from you? I just wanted to know those things. I don't want to be a downer, but I just want to know.
No, and I think that's where you were going, because you talked about, the first thing you talked about was credit, paying down our credit and establishing ourselves as credit worthy. The second thing you talked about is having the ability to pay, to be able to afford to pay. And then you were just on educating yourself on real estate. So that's a perfect timing for this question that you have, Rose, because it is about education and knowledge.
Yes.
Yes. So you said a few things about protecting. So I want to make sure I catch every part of it. So one of the best recommendations, and it's super short, is just one word: to protect yourself. Well, when it comes to, first and foremost, jump a little further back. When it comes to property tax, that's 100% unavoidable. Like, we all have to pay our taxes. If a person feel like they can't, property tax isn't like $100,000 a year, but on average, some property tax bills are like $1,200 or $2,000 or $3,000. It drives me crazy when I see families lose their home for a few $1,000s, but then they have a brand new car outside.
Yeah.
It's just like, how would you want to lose a house before you lose a car? I don't know. But it's really important that we protect our assets. And the best way to protect our assets is to have a trust. You want to put your property into a trust. And I know that we're kind of waving here, but I'll just end it here because you mentioned the question. You want to put your property in trust because if something ever happens to you, which I hope never happens to you, what a trust does, it protects your asset. It protects it from probate. Because if you die with assets, and it's great to have all this real estate, but if you die or you have a stroke or a heart attack and you need to be placed in a nursing home, if you die, it goes to probate. There's tons of fees when it goes to probate. If you die with a will, it's the old saying. I don't want to say the old saying, but the will is the worst way to go. It's a poor man's probate. That's what they call it, poor man's probate in real estate. But do not have a will. Put your property in a trust. Avoid probate. Avoid all of these fees. So I just want to end it here.
Okay, good.
Put your property in a trust.
Okay, so can we go back to the order of things that we were going along? So we talked about, paying down your credit. We were talking about how to own your first property. And so paying down your credit, have the ability to pay or be able to afford to pay, and then educate yourself on real estate. And I'm going back to that because these are such basic steps, but so important.
Yeah.
So important, especially the education part. So can you speak more to that? And we have about 13 minutes left. And so you just take as much time as you need.
No, I appreciate it. And since I know this is the end, I'm gonna consolidate the information. I'm gonna consolidate it. I know that we're weaving because these are some amazing questions just jumping around from the chat, from the group. But ultimately, if you're looking to purchase a home, the first thing, one of the many steps, and I will say that when I talked about researching neighborhood, is that you have to determine your budget. What can you reasonably afford? When I say, and then not only what can you feel that you can afford, but what can you be pre-approved for based on your ability, your buying power?
So pre-approval is important. Yes.
Yes. Oftentimes, most of us are extremely fearful of what a lender will tell us. But I'm here. Take the leap of faith because it's really prepared. You can't get to the next level without like going through the first level because there's so many levels. Yeah. I tell everyone, if you even have the thought, just go through it. Just talk to a lender. A lender's going to put you on track. They're going to say, you know what? Based on your current income, this is how much home you can get.
That's great.
Doing a budget, determining what you could be approved for. Because you know what? When you have that conversation, what's going to come to light is maybe I need to figure out a way to make more money. Or maybe I need to come up with a greater down payment. Because we look at the Zillows and the Redfins and we're like, oh, this is how much I'm going to pay. But purchasing a home, there's so many variables. You have closing costs. You have down payment. You have a fee here. You have a fee there. You have a fee here. And there's so many layers to it. But to really, going back to educating yourself, you really want to talk to a lender, a trusted lender, and really know what you could be approved for. Then I would say the following step would also research what I mentioned earlier about researching the properties, where you want to live. And then the most important step after that is speaking to a real estate agent. And I'm going to say there's tons of real estate agents and getting an idea of what the market is. I know you get so many images of the market on the news, but speaking to a credible agent, because there's a lot of agents out there.
Yes, there are.
I mean, they are.
They're not all like you. They're not.
There's some that scare me.
Right. There's a word called integrity. There's
some that doesn't have integrity, or some that will just leave you out to dry. But make sure you if you're going to hire an agent, make sure you hire someone that you feel somewhat credible. And these days, I would tell you to go on Google and maybe Google key terms like, what questions do I ask a real estate agent? Interview them. So you can get an idea of their experience and their availability to you, because this person is going to be on this journey with you. Yeah. And you want to make sure that whoever's on this journey with you, that they're somewhat credible, honest, and they can guide you on the right path, and they're not just looking for a commission from you,
Exactly.
or to make some money on you. Then also once you've already selected your agent, you've gotten your approval, then the next step, which is really getting out there and just taking that leap of faith and looking for a home.
Yes.
You know? And that's me assuming that you've already saved for a down payment. You have funds, you've talked to a lender, you've selected your agent. The next step is the most important step, is just putting yourself out there looking for a home.
Okay. So would you say that you should look for your agent before you get your credit and all of those things in order? Because it seems to me that the agent would be able to educate you as to, what the steps are, what to look for, and how to go about, like you said, be on the journey with you. And so you had said at first that the first step, or the first thing that a person should do, is pay down their credit.
Yes.
But would you say that, so you would say do that before you even look for an agent?
Yeah. So I would say before you step into a lender, and before you step into the lender and the agent, I would say so it's really, there's so many
variables. I know.
It's really hard. Everybody's in different places.
Right.
But I would say the first major step is securing your credit worthiness, making sure you're paying down debts and you're saving up a down payment.
That makes sense.
That would be the most major step if I was going to put
why you said it.
Pillars or clusters. So the first major step was just pretty much get your financial situation, make sure it's healthy, make sure you have a solid down payment, which FHA is 3.5% of the purchase price, which is an FHA requirement, 3.5. I would go with the rule of thumb, 5%. You put 5% aside. So whatever price you envision yourself purchase a home, you want to have measure it by a 5% ratio.
Okay, got you.
Ratio.
That's a very solid basic. That's a very solid base to start from.
And that was more than likely secure you a home. So let's say for the 5% on, let's say, a $700,000 home. So we're looking at 5%, so that's $35,000. So that's $35,000. So that's for a $700,000 home. So whatever you're looking at, you want to save up for a down payment,
right?
And you want to pay down your debts. Once you've saved up for a down payment and you pay down your debts, I would say the major next pillar would be talk to a lender and see what you can get approved for based on your current income and wherever you are in debts. I'm not going to tell you you have to be debt free, but you want to have as minimal monthly obligations as possible, because the more monthly obligations you have, that means the less buying power you will have.
Yes.
Less buying power, a car note can make a difference of you living in a $800,000 home versus a $500,000 home.
Got you. What I hear you saying most of all, and what I hear all in this entire conversation as the theme per se, is that property ownership is possible, because there are so many of us that don't believe that it's possible for us because of our age, because of our income, for whatever reason. But anyone with the will to do it, and the drive to do it, right? And really above all is the desire to do it that keeps you going, can do it. I have an aunt, she passed away now, but this woman, she had polio. Okay. She had one leg that was almost totally dysfunctional, except she wore a brace. Everything was against her. And yet she went to school, she got her cosmetology license, and she was the first out of her family, one of the very first out of her siblings to own her own home. And so when I look at that legacy, it lets me know that, it's definitely possible for anyone who really wants it, And so you have to, but that again, that's the key phrase. You have to really want it enough to do the work, and follow the journey to get it. It's sort of like I told the ladies and my audience a while back that my husband and I used to have a nonprofit organization that would go into the high schools in Los Angeles, and we would teach driver education. But that was just to give us a platform to discuss with the students their post-secondary options, what they were going to do after high school.
Mhm.
And so, you know, a lot of them didn't know that they could even afford to go to universities and colleges, and they were really smart. I mean, like the most brilliant of the brilliant, but they were stymied or stuck in the belief that they couldn't
Mhm.
go. And so we were there to unlock that belief
Mhm.
system for them and literally show them tangible steps to get to colleges and universities. So in paralleling that in juxtaposition to owning real estate, it's the same thing. It's you need to first of all have someone who knows what they're talking about, read a
Mhm.
book, gain the knowledge, understand that it's possible. And this
Mhm.
conversation right here is letting people know that it's possible. And
Yes.
so we want to thank you so much for being here and just sharing from whatever angle, you know, we ended up
Oh, I
sharing
know it was
from.
a
We were everywhere, and that's okay because you
everywhere.
know what? That's where we are sometimes as a
Mhm.
community. Is we're everywhere. We don't
Mhm.
know where people are starting from, what their mindsets are. You know, there are some people who are already there in terms of understanding I'm no longer property. There are some people who still have it subconsciously there, you know,
Mhm.
and so they seem stuck. And so that's what these conversations are for. That's what this platform is for,
Yes.
is to just unlock these conversations, unearth these myths, these wounds, these lies about us, and bring the truth to the surface so that we can begin to make steps and move from there. So I want to give you definitely the last word tonight.
Thank you so much. I love what you just said. I'm a firm believer. If it's possible for one, it's possible for many.
Hmm.
And like you mentioned earlier, it's about just having that mindset of seeing it as a possibility. Is it easy? No. But is it worth it?
Yes.
Yes. It
Okay.
is 100% worth it. And I just want to say this. This is really perfect. And that I want to drop a resource on everyone. California just passed. Well, not even they. It just happened today. They have a program which is limited in funding, and they're going to provide most. And let me just say this: most lenders have down payment assistance programs, which assist first-time homebuyers with 3.5 or even 5%.
Mhm.
Now, this is amazing. The new California Dream program just went effective today. Like my phone has been ringing off the hook.
Wow.
It's 20% down. And when you have a 20% down, that means there's no PMI, and PMI that's just an insurance you pay for your loan. And it's
Mhm.
a shared appreciation program, and it's 20% down that allows first-time home buyers that assist with closing costs and down payment. All of that upfront costs that keep many of us not
Mhm.
owners.
Yes.
This program is a limited funded program, which I believe is roughly about $300 million, which is going to go fast. So I
Yeah.
want to tell you, I have at least 10 appointments already on the
Oh
books.
my gosh.
for the
Okay, we'll
next-
make an 11th.
It just happened today, and it's
Well.
going. So if you can share my information,
How can people get in touch with you? Yes.
I will send it
I'll
out.
type it into the chat right now.
Yeah, you can share my email. I'll send out the information. But this is a lifetime opportunity that I wish that was available 3, 5, 6, 7 years. And the reason why this program is called a California Dream Act, because owning a home is the American dream. And for
Mhm.
so many, that ownership has been always just a dream. But this is the opportunity to create this, to create a reality. And I know what people always say, and the reason why, and I would encourage each person just to email me, but then also I'll make sure I link you to some trusted lenders, and then also sit down and go over the buying process, because today was a general overview,
Right.
but the real nuts and bolts is a true sit down, going through what it looks like and what it takes to be a qualified agent, or what a qualified agent looks like.
Okay, what's your email?
Richard
Richard
Realtor
Realtor
at outlook.com.
at outlook.com. You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Richard.realtor at outlook.com, and it is now in the chat. We'll also put it in our chat or our comments on YouTube when we post our video, so that people will have it there as well. And again, we want to thank you so much for being here. It has been an absolute pleasure. We're definitely going to invite you back to go into some more details with us. In the meantime, reach out to Richard. He's available now. As he said, this program, the California Dream Program, will only be available but for so long, because there are only so many funds. And so you better get in touch with him or a trusted realtor now, but we trust Richard, so we would prefer you get in touch with him. Thank you so much, everyone on Facebook. Thank you, everyone on YouTube. Thank you, ladies, our aunties. And thank you so much, Richard Jones, for being here and sharing your wealth of information with us. We appreciate you, and we would love if you would come back. Until next time, I'm Paige Means Hopper, the author of Healing the Wounds of American Slavery and the founder of the same movement of the same name. And you've been with We Are Your Aunties, and we'll see you back here next week. Thank you. Bye.
Hey, Auntie.